Forget about poisoning the well. Did the president just break the law? To the attorney who says it's a good thing he is pushing this deportation thing in Vegas, baby, it is that big a gamble. Jay Sekulow on how big a gamble and how legal a gamble at that. Jay, explain.
Hey, Neil. Well, I think that, look, the biggest issue here is not whether we need comprehensive immigration reform. I think a lot of us agree with that we need to fix the system. I'm the grandson of a Russian immigrant, so I understand that. The problem, the legal problem, is what was the underlying statutory basis for the president to issue an executive order? And there is none. And this reliance, and the president did it yesterday, on what President George H.W. Bush had done previously and what President Reagan had done, fails on two accounts. First, that was based on legislation that was passed in 1986. Number two, if you read the legislation that was involved in that gave the authority to then issue an executive order, it was involving people that came to the United States prior to 1982. So that law doesn't apply. So the president here, the real constitutional danger here is the president of the United States basically, with the stroke of his pen, he said he would do it and he did, creating law out of the air. I mean, he has no basis to do this.
The Reagan and Bush example
really sets back. Yeah.
Right, but the Reagan and Bush example is notwithstanding. The bigger thing is he said he was motivated to do this because the Republicans weren't doing anything. Now, they come back and say, well, we did have options and did have measures, but he goes on to say that they got to read, or Josh Earnest, I believe, had told one of our anchors earlier that it seemed that this was not a high priority for John Boehner, and so that was the means by which they leapt at this. That is at best a questionable way to get into a big constitutional fight.
It sure is, and you know, if it wasn't a priority for John Boehner, as he said, which I don't think is true, I think the House and Senate wanted to get reform done, but it wasn't much of a priority for the president either. He had the House and the Senate and the White House, of course, for 2 years and did not move immigration reform. He invested his entire first 2 years in office in Obamacare. So that was a choice the president made. And I think this lays down some gauntlet, if you will, to the House and Senate. I mean, you're 2 weeks after an election and your first move is to try to do a check. Well, I think he's going to end up with checkmate against him here because the power of the purse is going to be strong. And I think you're going to see no shutdown in government. That's not necessary. But you could see a targeted appropriations issue where clearly they say we're not funding the money necessary to enforce.
But is that even legal, Jay? In other words, couldn't the president, because in prior, government shutdown threats and all the like, they had similarly taken withdrawn funding for measures, let's say Republicans didn't like, and the president argued, Democrats argued at the time, Harry Reid and others, it's up or down on this budget or not. You can't just start picking apart things. They're going to do that again. I would imagine the president's going to do the same thing and blame this, if it gets to that, on Republicans. So shouldn't they avoid that?
Except for one thing. Harry Reid's not the majority leader anymore, effective in January. So there is a new sheriff in town in a sense, and I think that's going to change the political dynamic. It doesn't really impact the legal dynamic.
Jay, listen to what I'm saying. I understand what you're saying, but he is going to say, look, I vote on budgets or legislation that are put to me in whole pieces, not in little pieces. You Republicans try to force this like you did before, whether in the minority or majority, I will take the same position, and you Republicans are going to look like obstructionists by challenging me. What do you say to that?
Well, I think you're right that that's going to be the political positioning that the president's going to try to do. I think the Republicans' job here, the challenge for the Republicans, is to work with the American people who are vehemently, overwhelmingly opposed to what the president's done. Not immigration reform, but what the president's done. And to put that on the president's desk, make him make that decision of saying, you know what, if you don't give me everything I'm asking for, I'm not putting anything through. And then who's shutting down the government? Is it the president of the United States rather than the Congress? So I think that it is part of this is political theater, part of it's political dynamics, and part of it's political drama. But at the end of the day, you've got a serious constitutional issue here, and that is where in the world did the president get the authority to do this? And he himself, the University of Chicago constitutional law professor, knew months ago he didn't have the authority and certainly said it more than 25 times.
It was a lot of times. Jay, thank you very much. Good seeing you again.
Thanks, Neil.
In the meantime, you think it's like pulling teeth, trying to get healthcare enrollment numbers out of the White House? Maybe that's because they're including the guys who pull the teeth into those enrollment numbers at the White House. Holy moly, I mean moly. Back in a minute 30.